Hey, this is Brian.
And Shelby.
And you're listening to the Hyperspace
Pod Blast. Aren't you a little short for a podcast?
Huh?
Hey, all you cats and kittens out there. This is Hyperspace Pod Blast, playing the hits from a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, can you dig it? You said do something different.
That's different.
Uh-huh.
I like it.
Good. You reap what you sow, that's all I'm saying.
Cats and kittens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are we talking about today, Brian?
Well, as a matter of fact, we were specifically inspired this week from our very good friend and friend of the podcast, now called Soph Vong Law, hashtag Vong for life on Twitter, at SHLawrence12, the lesser half of Bright Tree Radio.
What? Oh my god.
Anyway, earlier this week, she tweeted out, "What part of Star Wars makes you cry every time? Mine is definitely Galen's message to Jyn in Rogue One. Gets me every time." And then she put a gif of, I guess it's not a gif, it's just a picture. So a picture of Jyn ugly crying, listening to Galen's message. And she got a lot of feedback from this tweet. So it seems to us like something that people are interested in.
People have a lot of feels.
Yeah, they got
Star
feels
Wars
about feels.
Feels on feels on feels on feels on feels.
Yeah, meta feels. Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to take this inspiration. We're going to give our own, each of us, our top 5 emotional moments. But like, I don't know. I went with Soph's idea and did sad emotional moments. Did you just go emotional in general?
Just emotional in general.
Okay.
Most of mine are sad, though. Let's be
Yours
real.
are probably better than mine.
Mm.
It makes me emotional. Anyway. Let's go 5-1. So what's your number 5?
My number 5, which I'm surprised that this isn't higher up on my list once I kind of put it all together, but it's when Vader asks Luke to take off his helmet so he can see him with his own eyes.
Oh, that is a good one.
That one always gets me. It's that like dying moment.
Yeah.
You know.
But you'll die. Nothing can stop that now. Or something like that. I don't know. It's weird to me that I didn't put that one now that you've said it, because I don't know, I felt emotions when you said it, but it literally never came up in my head. So that's weird. Sometimes I think that, you know how you get like desensitized to things?
Yeah, if you've seen it so many times.
I feel like the original trilogy has just become so much a part of my life that I don't think of it as, I don't know, that sounds really lame.
I only have one original trilogy thing on my list.
I have 2, and neither of them were that. They're both from Return of the Jedi, though, because Return of the Jedi number 1. Haters gonna hate. Y'all wrong.
I think there's also something about the original trilogy that, I mean, it's emotional, but it's more...
It's really not tear-jerky emotional.
No, it's not tear-jerky emotional, and it's also more, like, adventurous and iconic rather than emotional. Because, like, do I get emotional when I see Luke staring off into the binary sunset? Yes.
Right. It's different as you grow up, too, I think. Like, there's definitely no moment I really cried, I don't think, when I was little. But I don't know. I think you have to have a bigger worldview for some things to make you emotional that aren't just like obviously sad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I think I would have cried at the Baru Uncle Owen scene if I wasn't scared to death of it when I was little.
You always talk about being scared.
Yeah, I even wrote a piece for, I can't remember what her blog's called now. I'm sorry, I failed you. But I'll put it in the show notes. It's really good. It's a horror blog, but it's about like the first time you remember being scared. And that's actually it for me, oddly enough. But anyway, my number 5 is when the Rancor dies and the Rancor trainer, whatever you want to call him, comes down, you know, and he doesn't see the Rancor as this savage beast. Like, it was his pet, and he's just devastated that it's been killed. And that, like, when I was little, it didn't hit me, but now, honestly, anything that involves anyone's pet dying.
Yeah, you don't do dog deaths in movies.
Nope. Oh my.
No, if there's like a dog movie and like I don't even think I want to see it because there's that possibility of.
Yep, I don't even care if it's the best story ever. I'm out. Goodbye. But yeah, that's mine. It's as I've gotten older that it hurts my heart every time.
Interesting.
So number 4, what have you got?
R2 playing the recording of Leia in The Last Jedi. That one gets me. Like, it's one of those surprise one that really gets me. And I know it's coming. It got me the most the first time, but it really makes me emotional.
This keeps coming up in my head, but I liked The Last Jedi the first time I saw it. I liked it more the second time I saw it. I liked it the same amount the third time we saw it. We haven't seen it since, and I don't have any desire to.
No,
and I really don't think about it anymore, which makes me wonder, like, I don't know.
I don't think that means you don't like it.
No, I don't think it does either, but it's just something about Star Wars not being all-consuming that feels weird. Neither The Last Jedi nor The Force Awakens came to mind.
Wow.
Nope. Maybe I did this too quickly. But yeah, I mean, because, geesh, there's a lot of things that made me cry. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of things. Several things. I mean, the whole freeing the Fathier, as cheesy as it was, made me cry the first time. After that, I was like, okay, I knew it was coming. I could brace myself. But
once again, animals.
Yeah, and I guess it's just, I don't know, it didn't make a lasting impression. Just because it was emotional at the time, I guess it didn't become part of what resonates with me emotionally with Star Wars, I guess, if that makes sense.
See, I will also dive into some honorable mentions as it comes up in conversation. But
yeah, absolutely.
As I was writing down like things to pick from, I was just like writing down emotional moments. I also thought of, speaking of The Last Jedi, Leia in space.
Mm-hmm.
That one was really emotional, especially with the music.
And I think that one ties so much in with Carrie Fisher's passing.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like an emotional thing about Star Wars. It's more about...
Yeah, I really think if Carrie Fisher were still alive, that wouldn't be sad. Except for maybe the first time when you're like, oh no, did they just kill Leia? But then you realize she's not dead, so you're like, okay, that's not sad anymore. But just the tangents to the real world were too much, I think.
Yeah.
That's where that gets me. Like, in universe, it's really not that sad because of how it ends up, right? I mean, it's a little sad that you have the whole Kylo.
But it also is just emotional to see her on screen using the Force.
Right, that's true. That's a good point. And that's a good example of it not being sad, but just being
emotional,
overwhelming.
Yes,
that's a good point.
But again, that was my honorable mention for, I guess, around that part of my list. What is your number 4?
I put K2SO's death because I love that little turd. The big turd, I guess. He's a rather big droid. Yeah, I actually have 2 things from Rogue One, believe it or not, on my list. Because that movie, like...
it rips your heart out.
From about the middle through it. And there's certain points after you've seen it enough times where you know the story and things happen and you're just like, oh, that's going to make that so much more sad later. So I don't know. It's interesting to me that's... because that's far and away my favorite new, like, Disney-era Star Wars movie.
Absolutely. It's just echelons above.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people disagree with that, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. But you're wrong, so.
Oh, my God.
Kidding.
You know, it's funny. That was my number 3.
Oh,
so we can discuss.
So we'll just segue straight in.
But yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, K2SO's death gets me every single time because the loyalty between him and Cassian and also the final resolution between him and Jyn.
Yeah, exactly.
Her handing him the blaster and him trusting her. And it happens right before everything goes south.
Well, and he seems like so much of a self-preservation character.
Yes.
Until that moment. And then you're like, he's really, like, here for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's both fantastic and devastating. And just the way that, you know, as a droid, he's just kind of there and then he isn't. Which is really what is the same with people. But you have this very obvious, you know, sometimes when people die, sure, they stop breathing, but you kind of have to check. Mm-hmm. But his eyes...
the lights go out.
Yeah, and it's like literally he's here and then he's gone. And it's just...
I'm still a firm believer that there's a backup of him somewhere. I'm just...
Hey, man, it worked for Mr. Bones, so that's the beauty of droids.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that.
No spoilers for Last Shot, but maybe L3 is not as much gone as people think.
Anyway.
Dun, dun, dun. And that's another, I mean, to segue into that, I didn't think of Solo at all.
Oh, wow.
But I love that movie. Like, as time goes on, it's definitely number 2 in my post-Disney.
Him banging on the doors, saying, I'll come back for you to Kira, like, should have made my list, maybe.
It's too early.
It's too early, yeah.
See,
I don't know,
I
maybe
think
it has to settle in.
Yeah.
But that's definitely an honorable mention because, like, oh my gosh.
It's tough, and it's well acted. That whole movie is just performed almost flawlessly. But yeah, everything, like Val's sacrifice, I didn't know Val enough to care at that point. And, you know, as we've talked about ad nauseum on the show, it's a silly
waste.
move. Like, it just feels wrong, so it doesn't really work as sad. I think Rio's death was probably the saddest part of the whole movie.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they tried with Beckett, but it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't pull
Well, yeah,
my...
he was likable in that, okay, he probably should be dead kind of way. You know,
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was cool the way they did it though, where Han shot him and he knew he had to shoot him, but he didn't want to shoot him and he felt bad about it afterward. And they even have that exchange like, that's the smartest thing that you've done so far because I would have killed you.
Enfys Nest telling her story might have been one of the saddest moments. Like, it was like that
Yeah.
bitter, or it was emotional.
It was, definitely, because it's got that matriarchal thing that you don't see a lot in Star Wars, which was very cool.
But yeah, it's, I don't know, maybe it has just been too soon for me to get really emotional about it.
Yeah, I don't think it was that kind of movie. It was really
it wasn't as heavy. It was
Yeah.
a nice breath of fresh air.
It was a space
which is what can,
swashbuckling.
it contributes to
without
that fun
swashbuckling.
factor.
Yeah, fun.
Fun.
It was really good.
But back to K2SO's death.
Yes, and it was terrible, and
It
I
was.
hate it.
I hate it too, but it's great in the sense that it was very poetic.
Yeah, it was. That movie's so good.
So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is my favorite, like, quintessential Star Wars moment, and that's Luke throwing away the lightsaber in Return of the Jedi.
Oh.
And that's one of those where I guess it's not really sad. It's more of a powerful, like, this is what it means to be a Jedi. This is what it means to be a hero. You've won without killing anyone. Like, you became what you were supposed to be. That's how you win. You don't have to kill all the bad guys.
You're making me much more emotional about this than I was before.
That's my favorite Star Wars scene, so I've got lots of feelings about
Interesting that your favorite Star Wars scene is not your most emotional.
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know. I guess it doesn't have to be emotional to be favorite.
Okay. Yeah.
How about that? Wah, wah. So where are we now? Number 2?
Number 2. My number 2 is, I hate you. You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you. And I'm saying that in a tone that can help me keep it together.
Yeah. Well, you picked wrong because that's number 1.
That one gets me because it's just like gut-wrenching.
Mm-hmm. I mean, say what you will about the prequels, about how they're poorly acted. It's very hollow and wooden. You're not wrong most of the time, especially in episode 2.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, there is very little wrong with Revenge of the Sith. I love that movie. That is the closest movie to breaking into that holy trinity of the original trilogy as far as, like, overall ranking of Star Wars goes.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
It's
Actually,
by
no,
far.
I wouldn't. I would say Rogue One is, but if you say like
Fair, yeah.
saga films, I would say I would vote for that.
Yeah, my top 4 are always going to be the original trilogy and Revenge of the Sith, I think. And then Rogue One would be right there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that scene especially, but that whole movie, I think they finally got to where they wanted to be when they started the prequels, as far as being able to get the actors to respond to their surroundings for that whole, we're doing this all digital.
Yeah. And I mean, that's such a hard thing for actors to get used to. It was the pioneer films of that kind of technology.
Yeah. Well, and they filmed that with Anakin lying on some green stuff with Obi-Wan standing up on, like, some green boxes, I think. They may have had a little more of a background, but still, there's not a lot to work with there. And that scene is just gripping and powerful and soul-draining and terrible and awesome.
I think it's a great scene to basically push you into the dark times between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. That's
a really good point. That just says everything right there. Like,
that the people that you love have betrayed you, and not only that, but they have this like evil hate for you.
Mm-hmm. And for, I mean, really no good reason.
Good, like the most pure of pure has been lost.
Yeah, like he says, you were the chosen one, and this is what happens. You chose poorly. Yeah, that's my number one.
Okay. So what's your number 2?
I guess we gotta go in order. Okay, I'll come back to how awesome that scene is when we get to number one.
Oh no, you can talk about it now. Go ahead, just get it all out.
No, I'm gonna.
We're not gonna circle back to the same conversation.
Yes, we are.
All right, guess
I'm
we
gonna
are.
stay in my lane. My number 2 is Baze and Chirrut.
That's an honorable mention for me.
That is just, I love it. I love their dynamic the whole time. I see so much of myself in Baze. As I've said, I think several times before, if I was part of something like that, especially something faith-based like that, and it all fell apart, and I thought I was doing what was right, and what I thought I was doing was going to make things right, and then everything got worse and worse and worse and worse, I would be like even more cynical and turned off by it than Baze is. And then the way he just turns it all back around at the end after, like, you know, because at the very end, Chirrut is very still...
Very devout.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. And, like, he never gives up his faith in the Force. And I think that's the kick in the pants Baze needed. And unfortunately, you know, he dies right after that. But I like to think they're both part of the microorganism wills together now.
Yeah.
Thanks, George.
Yeah. I have no other comment on that.
Yeah.
But
I don't either. I mean, I don't understand why people get all mad about it. Like, it didn't happen. Who cares? He could have said whatever he wanted. He's probably trolling you guys because he knows you hated midichlorians. Yeah. He's like, this is going to be really funny. Oh, man.
Watch how mad these nerds get.
Yeah. The think pieces they're going to write about this. I can't wait to read them.
Anyway, because you know he reads
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got Star Wars blocked on like everything that he has in the world.
I would.
He's got a driver ahead of him, and if there's a banner that says Star Wars, he goes and pulls it down.
That moment with Baze and Chirrut's so powerful. I mean, I really wanted to put on my list, but I also had to like force myself to not put all Rogue One moments on my list.
Honestly, yeah, when I sat down, I was like thinking emotional. And maybe it's because...
It's just because of the tweet. That
Soph's tweet is leading you.
But also, I feel like Rogue One is like the most emotional Star Wars movie.
As far as, yes, it's a roller coaster. It builds these fantastic new characters up, and then it heartlessly takes them all away from you. Yeah. So my number 1 is from Rogue One. No.
And I think it is my favorite scene from Star Wars.
Oh, so you are a favorite and most emotional kind of gal.
Yeah, I am. I'm just an emotional woman. Anyway.
You can't help it. It's the curse of your gender.
I know.
Your whimsical gender.
Whimsical? What?
It's from some song.
Okay, that's strange. Anyway.
Oh, it's from Futurama, I think. Yes.
Oh, all right. Obviously, I'm making a joke, everyone. But
I'm
in
not.
case it
No,
wasn't clear. Anyway, it's the scene where Krennic is asking Jyn, "Who are you?"
Oh.
Which is my favorite scene.
Yeah, I knew that, but I couldn't remember it.
I was trying to debate between that and like Jyn and Cassian on the beach. Although I kind of wrap that whole scene into one since it all happens so quickly.
Yeah, that's
basically
true.
Like they defeat Krennic and then like it's like the end and they're like going down the elevator and going out to the beach. But
right.
I would say the "who are you" moment when she finally like gets her moment to have like the biggest revenge of her life.
True. That's a very good point.
It's like a triumphant emotional moment. It's not completely sad. It's sad that this is the grudge that she holds with her, like the reason why.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's sad, but not as far as like I'm gonna cry, it's sad. It's just sad that that's what her life became because of this man, essentially. Mm-hmm. Very good.
Yep, that's my number 1. And we know what your number 1 is because you've already spoiled it.
Well, you see, there's this scene in Revenge of the Sith where Anakin's beaten, about to be roasted, and he doesn't ask for help.
Marsh Mannequin.
That's terrible.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm making light of this emotional moment.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I don't want to start crying on air because we're live. Just kidding.
No.
Yeah, like he's there. He's probably gonna die. I mean, Darth Maul got cut in half and was fine, so he was probably fine. But whatever.
We also know he's not going to die because you've seen the original trilogy.
True.
Wonder how much more emotional it would be if you actually thought he was going to die if you're watching in chronological order.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I wish I could Eternal Sunshine myself and watch it in chronological order just to see what happens.
You actually end up not liking Star Wars at all.
Yeah, exactly. This is dumb. Turned into a Trekkie.
Oh no! Alternate universe.
Yeah. Oh, hey,
but go ahead. Explain how emotional you are.
Well, it's crazy that he's to this point where he has, I don't know, nothing left to lose really.
But he still holds on to his hate.
Exactly. And they can't have the banter. They can't, Obi-Wan's letting go of everything, basically. That's what he's expunging his feelings for who Anakin was. And this is, as he says later to Luke, this is where Anakin dies for him. There is no more Anakin as Obi-Wan walks away, except in the fact that Obi-Wan couldn't actually kill him. He left him for dead, sure, but he would have saved the galaxy a lot of hurt had he taken a couple steps and whoop, lopped off his head.
This is why Jedi shouldn't love. I'm kidding. But it is interesting that, he's like the most Jedi of Jedi in my mind.
Pretty much, yeah.
For
good or bad.
And he's admitting that he loves Anakin. He has this attachment.
True.
It may not be a romantic attachment.
Well, obviously not.
What I'm trying to say is, people always think, you shouldn't, Jedis can't love and can't have attachments. You always think romantic,
Right.
But,
well, and, I think both of them had attachments to their clones, too. And obviously, Anakin's a horrible example of a Jedi, but, he had all kinds of attachments with Ahsoka, with Padme, his mom, his clones, the people. He was always trying to help people, especially if you watch the Clone Wars. He gets attached to all kinds of random characters that he's trying to help there.
And Obi-Wan's laying it all out in this scene.
Exactly.
Admitting that he has this attachment to him, and all he's met with is... I hate you!
I love it. It's so good.
All right.
Terrific.
Are you crying yet?
But
any other honorable mentions for you?
Obviously, Han Solo dying because,
I'm surprised that wasn't on your list.
Pretty much favorite character.
The death of your favorite character was not on your most emotional list.
Well, because, if you read The New Jedi Order, he's still alive. So they flipped the script there, and he gets killed by his son instead of his sidekick getting a moon pulled down on top of him. So honestly, though, when I had to read Chewbacca dying way back in the day, I think I lost it more than I did because, like I've said before, I was prepared. There was no way that Han Solo was making his way out of this film, but it was for logistical behind the scenes reasons. Harrison Ford wasn't going to do this again. Yeah. It wasn't going to happen. So I had steeled myself for that eventuality, but it still hurt. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. Maybe this is part of why the new Star Wars doesn't resonate as much for me, is because one of my favorite parts of Star Wars gets cut out of it.
Fair enough.
A part that I'm used to seeing and carried forward Star Wars.
I would say an honorable mention for me would be the death of Bodhi. Actually, the death of Bodhi, yes, but also the moment with Bodhi that really gets me is him in the prison cell and finding I'm the pilot.
Yeah, coming back.
That's such an Borgullet. I like Borgullet, everyone.
Yeah, I think we just said that 2 episodes ago. Just in case this is your first foray into hyperspace pod blast, we are very much pro
Borgullet fans. We're a pro Borgullet podcast. FYI. Full disclaimer.
All first listeners just left.
I know.
Unsubscribe. But whatever.
But that's such an emotional moment. And obviously, Galen's death.
Yeah. I'm with Soph. I think Galen's message is
more emotional. Obviously, it drops Jen to her knees.
Yeah, as it should.
Yeah, I cry every time on that one, too.
Yeah.
I cry a lot.
Rogue One's a freaking tearjerker.
Which I'm okay with. Like, I feel
Right.
very cleansed after watching it.
Yeah, I love it. Like we've said, it's a favorite of the new Star Wars era. But it's still one of those that I can't just pop in. Solo is going to be the one where I'm like, I want to watch Star Wars. Bam, Solo.
I think an honorable mention for me would also be the moment when Luke is projecting in with Leia and has that moment.
Yeah, that's nice.
Or the
Yes.
moment when she whispers, like, in her hospital bed, Luke.
Oh, yeah. That was a nice callback.
That was good. I'm trying
What
to
was
think,
it
because there's also,
derivative?
like, Rey, whenever she has that, like, callback to when she was a little girl and the ship's leaving. That always
when she
gets me.
touches the lightsaber. Yeah, that's emotional. That's at a roller coaster for sure. A lot of the things with Rey are very emotional as far as just like ups and downs. And
When she said, Finn is hurt, and he goes, we'll see each other again. I know that.
Mhm.
That one's emotional.
Or when,
Or, oh my gosh, when she hugs Leia.
Or when the lightsaber gets pulled to her. That's like,
Oh, I know that. Sorry, I have like all kinds of chill bumps right now.
Yeah.
But the
a whole
hug with
different kind
Leia,
of
like when they
emotional.
acknowledge, like she knows that Han's gone and she hugs her, that one is really, that's a lot.
But doesn't hug Chewie. Just saying.
Yeah, should have been Chewie. Probably.
Yeah. There's a lot
There's
of
so
emotions
many.
in Star Wars, I think, is the bare bones of it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that will listen to this and be like, those things aren't sad at all. Here are the things that are sad.
Which we want to hear what,
Yeah, absolutely. Please tell us.
or just like makes you super hype, or
yeah,
like,
any kind of emotion. It doesn't have to be sad. Like so many times you think of emotional as being sad when it's not. I mean, football players before a big match are emotional.
Mhm.
They're not crying, but they're emotional. That
Oh,
adrenaline is hyping them up.
I was just thinking in Rebels, I get pretty emotional when Obi-Wan kills Maul.
You mean in Phantom Menace when Obi-Wan kills Maul?
Oh my god. Anyway, on that note, you can find us on Twitter at hyperspace_pod.
Feel free to email us at hyperspacepodblast@gmail.com.
And as always, you can check out our content on hyperspacepodblast.com.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, hit us up on Twitter or just respond to Soph's tweet and we'll read it and find out what your emotional moments are. And we'll be so emotional when we read them.
Bye, guys.
Oh my God. Bye.